The wallet sat on the diner counter like a loaded gun. Inside, enough cash to disappear, to breathe, to finally stop drowning. Mia's fingers trembled as she reached for the phone number tucked between the bills, not knowing she was about to call the devil himself. Victor Reyes didn't do accidents. He didn't believe in honesty or second chances. But when this quiet waitress returned what most would have stolen, something shifted in his cold, calculated world. What she thought was fate was actually a trap, and by the time she discovered the truth, it would be far too late to escape. If you want to see how far this story of betrayal and hidden truths travels, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city below. The fluorescent lights in Sal's diner buzzed like dying insects, casting a sickly yellow glow over cracked vinyl booths and a counter that had seen better decades. Mia Bennett moved through the late-night emptiness with practiced invisibility, refilling coffee cups that didn't need refilling, wiping down tables already clean. Anything to look busy, anything to avoid Sal's attention when he emerged from the back office smelling like whiskey and bad decisions. "Table 6 needs clearing," he barked, not looking up from his racing forms. "Yes, sir." Her voice came out barely above a whisper, the way it always did. 23 years old, and she still couldn't manage to speak at a normal volume, as if some part of her had learned long ago that being quiet meant being safe. The couple at table 6 had left without tipping. Again. Mia gathered their plates with the kind of resignation that had become her default emotion, stacking them carefully on her forearm. That's when she saw it. A wallet. Black leather, expensive looking, sitting half-tucked beneath a newspaper someone had abandoned. Her heart did a strange little jump in her chest. She glanced around the diner. Sal had disappeared back into his office. The cook was smoking out back. 2 truck drivers sat at opposite ends of the counter, both absorbed in their phones. No one was watching. Mia picked up the wallet with shaking hands. It was heavy, too heavy. She shouldn't open it, should just turn it into Sal, let him deal with it. But her fingers moved of their own accord, flipping it open. Her breath caught. Cash. Thick stacks of it, 50s and 100s. More money than she'd seen in her entire life outside of a bank. Her mind did the math automatically, frantically. Rent was 3 months overdue. Her car was making that grinding noise again. She'd been eating ramen for 2 weeks straight because groceries were a luxury she couldn't afford. This money could fix everything. The thought came swift and seductive, wrapping around her chest like a fist. She could take it. Right now. Slip it into her apron, finish her shift, and disappear. Sal paid her under the table anyway. No one would connect her to the missing wallet. She could finally stop living in that apartment where the heat didn't work and her neighbors screamed at each other through paper-thin walls. She could leave this godforsaken town, start over somewhere that didn't smell like grease and defeat. Her fingers tightened on the leather. No. The word came from somewhere deep, somewhere that still remembered who she'd been raised to be before life had worn her down to nothing. Stealing was wrong. She knew that with the same certainty she knew her own name, even if right and wrong seemed like luxuries she couldn't afford anymore. Besides, someone who carried this kind of money probably had the means to track it down. Probably had connections she didn't want to mess with. The thought sent a cold trickle down her spine. She found a business card tucked into one of the slots. No name, just a phone number embossed in silver on black cardstock. Simple. Expensive. The kind of thing that screamed power. Mia pulled out her phone, a cracked iPhone 6 that barely held a charge, and dialed before she could change her mind. It rang once. Twice. Yes. The voice that answered wasn't a question. It was a statement, cold and precise, like a blade sliding from its sheath. Her throat closed up the way it always did when she had to talk to strangers. "I found a wallet at Sal's Diner on Route 40. There's a number inside and What's your name?" The interruption was so sharp it made her flinch. Mia Bennett. I work here, and someone left. Don't touch anything else in the wallet. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The line went dead. Mia stared at her phone, heart hammering. Something about that voice had raised every instinctive alarm she possessed. It was the kind of voice that didn't ask for things. It took them. The kind of voice that made threats seem like promises. She set the wallet on the counter like it might explode, suddenly desperate to be rid of it. "What's that?" Sal emerged from his office, eyes narrowing with the predatory interest of a man always looking for an angle. Someone left their wallet. I called the number inside. They're coming to get it. Sal moved closer, reaching for it. Let me see. They said not to touch it. The words came out sharper than she'd intended, surprising both of them. Mia never contradicted anyone, least of all Sal. His face darkened. You getting mouthy with me, girl? No, I just... She shrank back instinctively. I'm sorry, I just thought... You're not paid to think, you're paid to serve coffee and keep your head down. He grabbed the wallet anyway, flipping it open. His eyes went wide. Jesus Christ, how much is in here? I don't know, I didn't count it. Bullshit. You called them awful quick for someone who didn't look inside. His fingers moved through the bills, greedy and quick. Could be a reward in this. Could be a big reward. Whoever's coming, I'll handle them. You get back to work. Mia's stomach twisted. She knew that look on Sal's face, knew he was already calculating how much he could skim off the top, maybe even claim the finder's fee for himself. It shouldn't matter. She'd done the right thing by calling. What happened next wasn't her problem. But something bitter and tired rose up in her throat. For once, just once, she'd like to see the right thing actually rewarded instead of exploited. I'm the one who called, she said quietly. I'm the one who found it. Sal's head snapped up. What did you say to me? Before she could answer, before she could apologize and backtrack the way she always did, the diner door swung open. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. The man who walked in didn't belong in Sal's diner. He didn't belong anywhere that served coffee for $1 and eggs that came from a carton. He belonged in boardrooms and penthouses, in places where the carpet cost more than Mia made in a year. He was tall, 6'2" at least, with dark hair swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved from marble by someone who understood cruelty. Sharp jaw, sharper cheekbones, and eyes so dark they were almost black. He wore a suit that probably cost more than her car was worth, charcoal gray with a black shirt underneath, no tie. Everything about him screamed money and power and danger. Victor Reyes. She didn't know his name yet, but somehow she knew it would matter. His gaze swept the diner in one cold assessment, taking in Sal, the wallet on the counter, and finally landing on Mia with an intensity that made her want to disappear into the floor. You called. It wasn't a question. Mia's voice had abandoned her completely. She managed a small nod. This your wallet, buddy? Sal had puffed himself up, trying to match the stranger's presence and failing miserably. I'm the owner here. My employee found it, but I'll be handling... Your employee found it. Victor's voice could have cut glass. Your employee called me, which means your employee is the only person I need to speak with. He moved to the counter with the kind of fluid grace that spoke of absolute physical confidence. Every step was measured, controlled, like a predator that never wasted energy on unnecessary movement. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. Mia found herself pressing back against the coffee maker, trying to create distance that didn't exist. What's your name? He was looking directly at her now, and she felt pinned beneath that gaze like a butterfly on a board. Mia. She hated how small her voice sounded, hated the stutter that only appeared when she was terrified. Mia. He repeated it slowly, as if testing how it felt in his mouth. You found my wallet. Yes. It was under the newspaper at table 6. The couple who were sitting there left about 30 minutes ago. I figured someone would want it back, so You didn't take anything. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. No, I just looked for a phone number to call. Something flickered in those dark eyes, surprise maybe, or calculation. Most people would have kept the cash. That's not mine to keep. It could have been. He picked up the wallet, checking the contents with quick, efficient movements. No one would have known. Mia's hands twisted in her apron. I would have known. The silence that followed felt heavy with meaning she didn't understand. Victor studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. How much do you make here? He asked abruptly. The question threw her. What? Your salary. How much does he pay you? A slight nod toward Sal, who was watching the exchange with growing unease. That's none of your damn business, Sal interjected. Look, you got your wallet back. Everything's square. I wasn't talking to you. Victor didn't even glance in his direction. Mia, how much? She shouldn't answer. It was personal, embarrassing. But something about the way he asked, the absolute certainty that she would answer, made refusal impossible. $7.50 an hour, plus tips. She didn't mention that tips were usually non-existent, and Sal often found reasons to dock her pay. And you work how many hours? As many as I can get, usually 50, 60 a week. She watched him do the math, saw something dark pass over his features. When he pulled out his wallet, the same one she'd returned, and extracted a stack of hundreds, she felt her heart stop. "This is yours." He set the money on the counter between them. Mia stared at it. "I can't. That's too much. I didn't." "You returned something valuable. This is appropriate compensation." "It's not." She couldn't even count how much was there. At least $2,000, maybe more. "This is too much. I just did what anyone should do." "But most wouldn't." He pushed the money closer. "Take it." "I really can't." "Now, wait just a minute." Sal reached for the cash and everything changed. Victor moved so fast Mia barely saw it. One moment Sal was reaching across the counter, the next Victor had his wrist in an iron grip, bending it backward at an angle that made Sal gasp. "Don't." The single word carried more threat than any speech. "This doesn't concern you." He released Sal with a casual flick that sent the older man stumbling backward, face red with humiliation and pain. Victor turned back to Mia as if nothing had happened. "The money is yours. What you do with it is your business." He reached into his jacket, a movement that made her flinch before she could stop herself, and pulled out a business card. Black, expensive, with silver embossed text, just like the one in his wallet, except this one had a name, Victor Reyes. And beneath it, Elysium. "If you're ever looking for a change of employment, call that number." He slid the card across the counter. "I could use someone honest on my staff." "What kind of work?" The question escaped before she could think better of it. His mouth curved in something that might have been a smile on someone else. On him, it looked dangerous. "Service industry, better hours, better pay, better environment than..." He glanced around the diner with barely concealed disdain. "This." Mia looked down at the money, at the card, at this man who had walked into her life like a force of nature and tried to hand her an escape route on a silver platter. Every instinct she possessed was screaming at her to say no, to keep her head down, stay invisible, play it safe the way she always had. But rent was 3 months overdue. Her car was dying. She was so tired of being hungry, of being scared, of living in a world where working 60 hours a week still wasn't enough to survive. "Thank you," she whispered, taking the money with shaking hands. For this. "Thank yourself, you earned it." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "The offer stands. Call me when you're ready." And then he was gone, leaving behind only the scent of expensive cologne and the feeling that Mia's life had just tilted on its axis. "Give me that money," Sal demanded the moment the door swung shut. "That's finder's fee for the diner. You were on my clock when you found it." Mia looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in 2 years. Saw the mean little bully who'd been taking advantage of desperate people for decades. Saw the predator who preyed on those too weak or too scared to fight back. She'd been too weak for so long, but standing there with $2,000 in her hands and a business card that felt like a lifeline, something shifted inside her. "No," she said clearly. Sal's face turned purple. "What did you say?" "I said no." Her heart was hammering so hard she thought it might burst, but her voice stayed steady. "This is mine. He gave it to me. And I'm done. You walk out that door, you don't come back." "Good." She untied her apron, letting it fall to the floor. "I quit." She walked out of Sal's diner and didn't look back. Twag. The apartment she shared with 2 other girls, though shared was generous since they had the bedrooms and she had the couch, felt smaller than ever that night. Mia sat on her makeshift bed, the cash spread out on the coffee table in front of her like evidence of a crime. $2,200. She'd counted it 3 times, unable to believe the number. Her roommate Jen emerged from her bedroom, took one look at the money, and whistled low. "Jesus, Mia. Did you rob a bank?" "Found a wallet, returned it. The owner gave me a reward." "Some reward?" Jen dropped onto the couch beside her, eyeing the cash with undisguised interest. "You know rent's due, right? Carlos has been asking about it. Says if we can't pay by Friday, we're out." I know. Mia had been avoiding their landlord for weeks, taking the back stairs to dodge his increasingly hostile questions. So you can cover your share now, right? I mean, you've got more than enough there. Mia looked at her roommate, a girl she barely knew, who treated her like an inconvenience at best. Looked at the apartment where she wasn't welcome, where she existed in the margins of other people's lives. She thought about Victor Reyes and his dangerous smile, the business card that promised something better, something more. I'll have it for you tomorrow, she said quietly. After Jen went back to her room, Mia picked up the black card, turning it over in her fingers. Elysium. She knew the name. Everyone in the city did. It was the most exclusive nightclub in the downtown district, the kind of place where celebrities and millionaires went to be seen, the kind of place where girls like Mia didn't belong. But Victor had offered her a job. Better hours, better pay, better environment. The question was whether she was brave enough to take it. She thought about Sal's diner, about serving coffee to people who looked through her like she was furniture, about counting pennies and eating ramen and wearing shoes with holes in them because new ones were a luxury she couldn't afford, about being invisible. Before she could talk herself out of it, she dialed the number on the card. It rang twice before a woman answered, her voice crisp and professional. Elysium, how may I help you? My name is Mia Bennett. Victor Reyes gave me this number. He said to call if I was interested in employment. There was a pause, the sound of typing. One moment, please. Classical music filled the line. Mia's palms were sweating. This was insane. She should hang up, forget about it. Find another diner job tomorrow. Stay safe. Stay small. The music cut off abruptly. Mia, Victor's voice, as cold and precise as it had been in person. Mr. Reyes, I wanted to ask about the job you mentioned, if it's still available. It is. Can you start Monday? Monday? That was 3 days away. Yes, I can start Monday. Good. Come to the club at 7 p.m. Ask for Claudia at the employee entrance. It's in the back alley. Can't miss it. She'll get you set up. What exactly will I be doing? Service work. You'll start in the VIP sections, taking drink orders, making sure guests are comfortable. Nothing you can't handle if you could manage that diner. Relief flooded through her. It sounded legitimate, professional. And the pay? $20 an hour plus tips. Most of our servers clear $300-400 a night in tips. Sometimes more. Mia's breath caught. That was more than she made in a week at Sal's. That's very generous. It's what you're worth. A pause. Don't be late Monday. He hung up before she could respond. Mia sat in the darkness of the apartment, clutching the phone to her chest, and let herself believe, just for a moment, that things might actually get better. She had no way of knowing that Victor Reyes didn't believe in charity, that every move he made was calculated 3 steps ahead, that her honesty in returning his wallet hadn't been a surprise. It had been exactly what he'd expected, because Victor hadn't lost his wallet at all. He'd left it there deliberately, in that specific diner, at that specific time, knowing that Mia Bennett worked the late shift on Thursdays, knowing she was desperate and drowning and exactly the kind of honest that could be useful to a man in his position. He'd been watching her for 2 weeks, learning her patterns, her weaknesses, her desperate integrity. The wallet had been a test she'd passed perfectly. Now the real game could begin. But Mia knew none of this as she fell asleep on her couch that night, the business card tucked safely in her pocket, and something like hope flickering in her chest for the first time in years. She had no idea she was already caught in a trap that had closed around her the moment she'd made that phone call. No idea that Victor Reyes had chosen her very carefully for reasons that had nothing to do with returned wallets and everything to do with the dangerous game he was playing with people far more powerful than a scared waitress could ever imagine. She was a piece on his chessboard now, and pieces didn't get to choose their own moves. Monday arrived too fast and too slow at the same time. Mia spent the weekend trying not to think about what she'd agreed to, paying off her share of rent and telling her roommates she'd found better work. Jen had looked skeptical. Carlos had shrugged like he didn't care either way. And Mia had spent Sunday afternoon standing in front of her closet trying to figure out what someone wore to work at a place like Elysium. She settled on black pants and a white blouse, the closest thing she owned to professional, and took the bus downtown, arriving 40 minutes early because being late felt like a death sentence. The club sat on a corner lot in the financial district, all dark glass and sharp angles, looking more like a fortress than a nightclub. During the day it seemed almost ordinary, but Mia could imagine how it would look at night with lights and music and beautiful people streaming through the front entrance. She wasn't going through the front entrance. The alley behind the building smelled like garbage and rain, narrow and dark even in the late afternoon. Mia found the employee entrance tucked beside a dumpster, a plain metal door with a keypad lock and a small sign that read, "Staff Only." She knocked, then felt stupid for knocking, then knocked again harder. The door swung open to reveal a woman in her 40s with steel gray hair pulled into a tight bun and eyes that could cut through concrete. She looked Mia up and down in one swift assessment that somehow took in every flaw, every cheap seam, every sign that Mia didn't belong here. "Mia Bennett?" "Yes, ma'am." "I'm Claudia, head of staff." She stepped back to let Mia inside. "You're early. That's good. I hate people who can't tell time." The back hallway was surprisingly plain, concrete floors, fluorescent lights, the kind of utilitarian space that existed behind every glamorous facade. Claudia led her through a maze of corridors, past storage rooms and offices, moving with the brisk efficiency of someone who'd walked these halls 1,000 times. "You've worked service before, so I'm not going to waste time on basics," Claudia said without looking back. "Our clientele is high-end. Politicians, executives, celebrities. They pay premium prices and expect premium service. You smile. You're polite, you bring them what they want, and you don't ask questions. Ever. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." "Don't call me ma'am. Claudia is fine." She stopped at a door marked Women's Staff. "Locker room. You'll get a uniform, black dress, simple, professional. No jewelry except small earrings, hair up or back. Minimal makeup. We're not a brothel. We're a club. You represent elegance and discretion." Mia nodded, throat tight. "There are rules here." Claudia's voice dropped lower, more serious. "You don't drink on the job. You don't flirt with clients. You don't give out your phone number or social media or agree to meet anyone outside the club. You see something you shouldn't see, you forget it immediately. Someone asks you questions about other guests or about Mr. Reyes. You know nothing. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear." "Good." Claudia pushed open the door. Inside, 3 other women were changing into their uniforms, laughing about something Mia didn't catch. They all looked young, beautiful in that effortless way that came from good genetics and better skincare. Mia felt about as elegant as a potato. One of them, a redhead with legs that went on forever, looked up and smiled. "New girl?" "This is Mia," Claudia said. "She's starting tonight. Sierra, show her the ropes." Sierra's smile widened, friendly and genuine. "Sure thing. Hey, I'm Sierra. That's Jade." She pointed to an Asian woman applying lipstick with surgical precision. "And that's Nicole." A blonde with a pixie cut waved from across the room. "Your locker is number 47, Claudia said, handing Mia a key. "Uniform should be inside. If it doesn't fit, tell me now so I can get you another. We open in 90 minutes. Sierra will train you on the floor before guests arrive." She paused at the door. "And Mia, don't make me regret hiring you." The door closed with a soft click that somehow felt like a warning. "Don't mind Claudia," Sierra said, already pulling out a black dress from one of the lockers. "She's tough but fair. Acts like a drill sergeant, but she'll go to bat for us if anyone crosses a line." She tossed the dress to Mia. "Try that on. We're about the same size." The dress fit better than anything Mia had worn in years. Simple, elegant, hitting just above the knee with a modest neckline. It made her look older, more sophisticated, like someone who belonged in a place like this. "Wow," Nicole said, looking up from her phone. "That actually looks really good on you." "Thanks." Mia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "So how'd you get the job?" Jade asked, examining her eyeliner in a compact mirror. "Usually there's like a 3-month wait list to work here." "We all had to audition." "Audition?" "Interview process," Sierra clarified, shooting Jade a look. "They're really selective about who they hire. This isn't like other clubs where they just want pretty girls who can carry a tray." "Victor hired her directly," Claudia had said. Mia wasn't sure if she should mention that. "I returned something he lost," she said carefully. "He offered me a job." The room went quiet for a beat too long. "You met Victor Reyes?" Sierra's voice had changed slightly, something cautious creeping in. Just briefly, he seemed professional. Boom, Nicole laughed, but it sounded strained. Professional. Yeah, that's one word for him. What Nicole means, Jade said, closing her compact with a sharp snap, is that Victor doesn't really do brief. If he hired you personally, there's a reason. He doesn't make random decisions. Mia's stomach twisted. What kind of reason? Who knows? Sierra's smile was back, but it didn't reach her eyes. Just be careful, okay? Victor's not a bad boss, but he's complicated. This whole place is complicated. Complicated how? You'll see. Sierra stood, smoothing down her dress. Come on, let me show you the floor before things get crazy. The main club was stunning in a way that made Mia's breath catch. She'd expected loud and flashy, but Elysium was all dark sophistication, black marble floors, intimate booth seating, and deep burgundy ambient lighting that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. A massive bar dominated one wall, backlit bottles glowing like jewels. The DJ booth sat elevated at the far end, currently empty but surrounded by state-of-the-art sound equipment. Main floor is general admission, Sierra explained, walking her through the space. Bar service, some table service, dancing. Pretty standard club stuff. But the real money is upstairs. She pointed to a curved staircase roped off with velvet cords. VIP sections. That's where you'll be working. Why VIP? Because Victor requested it. Sierra's expression was unreadable. Like I said, he doesn't make random decisions. Come on. Upstairs was even more impressive. Private booths with sound dampening, waitstaff call buttons, bottles of liquor that cost more than Mia's monthly rent. Everything was designed for privacy, for discretion, for people who had things to hide. You'll be assigned to Section 3, Sierra said, showing her a semicircular booth that overlooked the main floor through one-way glass. Guests can see out, but nobody can see in. You take their orders through this tablet, everything gets charged to their account automatically. Tips usually get added at the end of the night. How much do people usually tip? Sierra grinned. Depends on the night. I've walked out with 200, I've walked out with 800. Average is probably 3 to 4, like Claudia said. These people have money to burn, and if you're good at your job, they'll show appreciation. What makes someone good at their job here? Invisible until you're needed, attentive without being intrusive, and absolutely zero judgment, no matter what you see or hear. Sierra's voice was serious now. People come here because they trust the discretion. You see a senator with someone who isn't his wife? You saw nothing. You hear a CEO making a deal that sounds shady? You heard nothing. Understand? Mia nodded, anxiety creeping up her spine. What kind of people come here? Rich ones, powerful ones, dangerous ones. Sierra touched her arm gently. Look, I don't want to freak you out. Most nights are fine. People drink, they talk, they have a good time, they go home. But sometimes, just keep your head down and do your job. Don't get involved in anything that doesn't concern you. Before Mia could ask what that meant, music started pumping through the sound system, just testing levels, but loud enough to make conversation difficult. Sierra led her back downstairs where other staff were arriving, the club coming to life around them. Claudia gathered everyone for a brief meeting, going over the night's VIP reservations and special requests. Mia's section had been reserved by someone named Marcus Chen, a regular who apparently spent money like water and expected perfection. Don't screw this up, Claudia said, looking directly at Mia. Chen's tab last month was $40,000. He's the kind of client we keep happy. $40,000. In 1 month. At a nightclub. Mia felt sick. The doors opened at 10. By 10:30, the main floor was packed with beautiful people in expensive clothes, dancing and drinking and laughing with the kind of careless abandon that came from having money to waste. Mia watched from her post upstairs, tablet in hand, waiting for her section's guests to arrive. They came at 11. 3 men in suits that probably cost more than her car, accompanied by 4 women who looked like they'd stepped off a runway. Marcus Chen was easy to identify, commanding the group with casual authority, his voice carrying even over the music. Mia approached their booth with her best professional smile plastered on. Good evening, my name is Mia. I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you off with drinks? Chen barely glanced at her. Bottles of Cristal and Clase Azul. Keep them coming. Right away, sir. She put in the order, trying not to think about the fact that she'd just rung up over $4,000 in alcohol and retreated to the service station to wait for the bottles. Another server, a guy named Marcus, who'd been working there for 2 years, showed her how to present the bottles properly, how to pour with flourish, how to make the service itself part of the performance. They're not just paying for booze, he explained. They're paying for the experience. Make them feel like royalty. Mia carried the bottles back on a tray that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, her hands shaking slightly. But she managed the pour without spilling, managed the smile without it slipping, and when she stepped back to give them privacy, Marcus Chen actually looked at her for the first time. "You're new." "Yes, sir. First night." "Where's Simone? She usually handles this section." "I'm not sure, sir. I was just assigned here." He studied her for a moment, something calculating in his gaze. "What's your name again?" "Mia." "Well, Mia, try not to fuck this up. I don't like training new waitresses." One of the women laughed, the sound cutting and mean. Mia felt her face burn but kept her expression neutral. "I'll do my best, sir." She escaped back to the service station, heart pounding. Sierra found her a few minutes later. "You okay? You look like you're going to throw up." "I'm fine. That's a lot of money for alcohol." "Welcome to Elysium." Sierra squeezed her shoulder. "You'll get used to it. First night is always the hardest." But it wasn't the money that had Mia rattled. It was the way Marcus Chen had looked at her, like he was assessing her value, like she was something to be purchased and consumed just like the champagne in those bottles. The night blurred after that, fetching drinks, clearing glasses, smiling until her face hurt. Chen's group got louder as the hours passed, the women draping themselves over the men, everyone touching everyone else with the casual intimacy of people who'd done this before. Around 2 a.m., one of the men grabbed Mia's wrist as she was clearing empties. "Hey, sweetheart, what time do you get off?" "I'm working until close, sir." She tried to pull away gently, but his grip tightened. "I'll make it worth your while. Whatever they're paying you, I'll triple it." "I'm very flattered, but I'm just here to work." Her voice came out smaller than she wanted, fear creeping in around the edges. "Come on, don't be like that." The lady said no. The voice came from behind her, cold and familiar. Victor Reyes materialized from the shadows like he'd been summoned, his presence immediately dominating the space. He wasn't touching anyone, wasn't even standing particularly close, but something about him made the drunk businessman release Mia's wrist like it had burned him. "We were just talking," the man said, but his bravado had evaporated. "Looked like harassment to me." Victor's voice could have frozen fire. "You're done for the night. Leave." "Now wait a minute. I've spent a fortune here. And you're about to spend nothing ever again if you don't get up and walk out right now." Victor finally looked at the man, and whatever he saw in those dark eyes made him go pale. The entire group scrambled to gather their things, mumbling apologies, Chen shooting Victor a look that was equal parts anger and fear. Within 2 minutes, they were gone. Mia stood frozen, still holding the tray of empty glasses, her wrist throbbing where the man had grabbed her. "You all right?" Victor asked, and his voice had changed, still controlled, but gentler somehow. "Yes. Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cause a problem." "You didn't cause anything, he did." Victor took the tray from her hands and set it on a nearby table. "Did he hurt you?" "No, I'm fine. Really." He took her wrist anyway, examining the red marks with a frown. His touch was surprisingly gentle, clinical, like he was cataloging an injury rather than offering comfort. "Claudia should have warned you about the grabby ones," he said, releasing her. "Most of our clients are fine, but there's always a few who think their money buys them whatever they want." "It's okay. I've dealt with worse at the diner." Something flickered across his face. "That doesn't make it acceptable here. If anyone touches you again, you find me or you find Claudia immediately. Understood?" "Yes, sir." "Victor. Just Victor." He straightened his jacket, that dangerous composure sliding back into place. "Go take a break. Get some water. You've been up here for 4 hours straight. My section is empty now. Go." It wasn't a suggestion. Mia nodded and headed for the stairs, feeling his eyes on her back the whole way down. The staff break room was blessedly quiet after the chaos upstairs. Mia sank into a folding chair and put her head in her hands, trying to steady her breathing. Her wrists still hurt, her feet were killing her, and she felt like she'd been thrown into a world where she didn't speak the language. First night's a bitch, huh? Nicole appeared with 2 bottles of water, handing one to Mia. Heard about Chen's group. Those guys are assholes. Do things like that happen a lot? Often enough, but Victor doesn't usually step in personally. Nicole sat down across from her, curiosity bright in her eyes. He must really like you. He barely knows me. Yeah, well, Victor doesn't help people he doesn't have a use for. Trust me on that. She took a sip of water. Word of advice? Whatever he wants from you, be careful before you give it to him. I don't understand. Nicole opened her mouth, then closed it, shaking her head. Just be careful. That's all. Before Mia could press for more, Claudia's voice came over the intercom. All staff, we need everyone on the floor. VIP, arrival in 5. Nicole jumped up. Shit, that's never good. What's a VIP arrival? Someone important enough that Victor wants extra coverage. Come on. They hurried back upstairs where the entire staff had assembled, everyone looking nervous. Claudia was barking orders, making sure every section was perfect, every bottle stocked, every surface gleaming. Victor stood near the VIP entrance, watching the preparations with that unreadable expression. He'd changed into a different suit, this one black on black, making him look even more dangerous. A man entered through the VIP doors, flanked by 2 massive bodyguards. He was older than Victor, maybe 50, with silver hair and a face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile decades ago. Everything about him screamed power and money and violence barely contained. Dmitri. Victor's voice was perfectly neutral as he extended his hand. Welcome back. The man, Dmitri, ignored the offered handshake. We need to talk, privately. Of course, the Aurora room is ready for you. They disappeared into a private room that Mia hadn't even known existed, the bodyguards taking up positions outside the door like sentries. The entire staff released a collective breath. Who was that? Mia whispered to Sierra. Dmitry Volkov, Russian, very connected, very dangerous. Sierra's face was pale. When he shows up, bad things usually follow. What kind of bad things? Before Sierra could answer, the Aurora room door opened and Victor emerged alone, his expression darker than Mia had ever seen it. He scanned the assembled staff and his eyes landed on her. Mia, with me. Her heart stopped. Me? Now. Every eye in the room was on her as she crossed to where Victor stood. He led her down a hallway she'd never been in, away from the noise and lights, to an office that was all dark wood and leather furniture. Sit, he said, closing the door. Mia sat, hands clasped in her lap to hide their shaking. Did I do something wrong? No. Victor poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter, amber liquid catching the light. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay? He turned to face her, leaning against the desk. How desperate are you? The question hit her like a slap. I'm sorry. For money, for security, for a way out of whatever life you were living before you walked into this club. His eyes were black holes pulling her in. How desperate? Mia's throat went dry. I don't understand what you're asking. I think you do. He took a sip of his drink. I have a problem, a very specific problem that requires a very specific solution. You could be that solution, but it would require you to trust me, to do exactly what I tell you without asking questions. And it would be dangerous. Dangerous how? The kind that could get you killed if you make a mistake. He said it so matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. But the kind that could also set you up for life if you succeed. Mia's heart was hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. Why me? Because you're honest. Because you're invisible. Because no one in my world would ever suspect someone like you. He set down his glass. And because you need this chance as much as I need someone I can control. Control? Wrong word. Trust. Someone I can trust who has no connections to this world, no agenda beyond survival. He moved closer, crouching down so they were eye level. I'm going to be very clear with you, Mia. What I'm about to propose is illegal. It's dangerous. And it will change your life in ways you can't imagine. But it will also pay you more money than you'd make in 10 years of working any legitimate job. She should run. Should stand up right now and walk out and never look back. Every instinct she possessed was screaming danger. But she thought about her dying car and her overdue bills and the apartment where she slept on a couch and ate ramen for dinner. Thought about Sal's diner and grabby customers and a future that looked exactly like her past, small, scared, invisible. What would I have to do? The words came out barely above a whisper. Victor smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing she'd ever seen. Marry me. The world tilted sideways. What? I need a wife. Temporarily. For appearances, for legitimacy, for access to certain social circles that don't trust single men in my line of work. He stood, pulling out his phone and showing her a photo. This is Elena Volkov, Dmitri's daughter. We've been negotiating a business arrangement, but her father doesn't trust me. Thinks I'm too ruthless, too unstable. He wants to see that I can commit to something, build something legitimate. So you want a fake wife? I want a real wife, legally married, living in my house, attending events at my side. The arrangement would last 1 year. In that year, you play the role perfectly. Devoted, respectable, the kind of woman who could reform a man like me. At the end, we divorce quietly, you walk away with $2 million, and we never see each other again. $2 million. The number was so absurd, Mia almost laughed. You're insane. Probably. He pocketed his phone. But I'm also serious. I need this deal with Volkov to go through, and I need a wife to make it happen. You need money and security. It's a transaction. Clean, simple, mutually beneficial. There's nothing clean or simple about this. No, he agreed. But it's the offer on the table. You have until tomorrow night to decide. And if I say no, then you keep your job here, work your shifts, make your tips, and we forget this conversation ever happened. He walked to the door, opening it. Go home, Mia. Think about it. Really think about what your life looks like in 5 years if nothing changes. She stood on shaking legs and walked past him, catching the scent of his cologne. Expensive, understated, dangerous. Mia. His voice stopped her in the doorway. Whatever you decide, what I said earlier still stands. No one touches you without consequences. You're under my protection now, whether you take the deal or not. She didn't trust herself to speak, just nodded and fled. The bus ride home felt like a fever dream. Mia sat in the back, staring out at the city lights, Victor's proposal echoing in her head like a song she couldn't stop humming. Marry him. For $2 million. For 1 year. It was insane. It was dangerous. It was probably illegal in ways she didn't even understand. But it was also the only way out she could see. She made it back to the apartment at 4 a.m., her feet screaming and her head spinning. Jen and Carlos were both asleep. Mia collapsed on her couch and stared at the water-stained ceiling, trying to imagine a future where she wasn't trapped, wasn't scared, wasn't small. $2 million could buy a lot of futures. The question was whether she was brave enough or desperate enough to sell 1 year of her life to get there. She didn't sleep. How could she? Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Victor's face, heard his voice asking, "How desperate are you?" Felt the weight of $2 million pressing down on her chest like a stone. By 6 a.m., Mia gave up trying. She showered in the cramped bathroom she shared with 2 other people, dressed in the same jeans she'd worn for 3 days straight, and walked to a coffee shop she couldn't afford because sitting in that apartment for 1 more minute would drive her insane. The barista, a kid with purple hair and tired eyes, took her order without really seeing her. Story of her life. Invisible Mia, always in the background, never quite real enough to remember, except Victor had seen her. Had looked at her like she mattered, like she was a solution instead of a problem. The fact that his attention felt more like a trap than a gift didn't change the strange flutter it caused in her chest. She pulled out her phone and did something she'd been avoiding for months. Checked her bank account. The number staring back at her was pathetic, even with Victor's reward money factored in. After paying rent and keeping enough for groceries, she had maybe $800 to her name. $800 between her and complete destitution. $2 million. The number was obscene, impossible, life-changing. You look like someone who's got a decision to make. Mia jumped, nearly spilling her coffee. A woman slid into the seat across from her uninvited, late 30s, sharp features, expensive clothes that somehow didn't look out of place in this dingy coffee shop. Her eyes were intelligent and calculating, the kind that missed nothing. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" "No, but I know you." The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Mia Bennett, 23. Been working at Sal's Diner until very recently. Just started at Elysium last night. Had a very interesting conversation with Victor Reyes in his office around 2:30 a.m. Ice flooded Mia's veins. "Who are you?" "Someone with a vested interest in Victor's business decisions." She stirred sugar into coffee she hadn't ordered, movements precise and deliberate. "He offered you a deal. I'm here to offer you some free advice. Don't take it." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Please. I have cameras in that club that even Victor doesn't know about. I heard every word." She leaned forward, voice dropping. "He's using you. Whatever he told you about needing a wife, about legitimacy, about Dmitry Volkov, it's all manipulation. Victor doesn't do anything that doesn't serve his interests first." Mia's hands tightened around her coffee cup. "If you work for him, why are you telling me this?" "I don't work for him. I work against him." The woman's smile turned sharp. "My name is Detective Sarah Chen, Major Crimes Division. We've been building a case against Victor Reyes for 3 years, and we're very close to bringing him down. If you get involved with him now, you'll go down with him." A cop. This was a cop trying to scare her away from Victor's offer. Mia's first instinct was to stand up and walk out, but something kept her frozen in her seat. What did he do? What are you investigating him for? What hasn't he done? Sarah pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. Money laundering, racketeering, extortion. We suspect him of at least 4 murders, though we can't prove it yet. Elysium isn't a nightclub. It's a front. A very pretty, very expensive front for one of the largest criminal organizations on the East Coast. Mia opened the folder with shaking hands. Photos spilled out. Surveillance shots of Victor meeting with men who looked like movie mobsters. Financial records with numbers that made her dizzy. Crime scene photos that made her stomach turn. "That's Marcus Chen," Sarah said, pointing to one of the bodies. "Found in the river 3 months ago with 2 bullets in his head. He'd been skimming from Victor's operations. This is what happens to people who cross him." "The Marcus Chen who was at the club last night?" "Different Marcus Chen, common name." Sarah closed the folder. "Look, I don't know what he offered you, but whatever it is, it's not worth your life. Victor is charming when he wants to be, but he's a killer. He will use you until you're no longer useful, and then he'll dispose of you just like everyone else who got too close." Mia pushed the folder back across the table, mind racing. "If you know all this, why haven't you arrested him?" "Because knowing and proving are different things. Victor's careful. He has lawyers, he has judges in his pocket, he has enough legitimate businesses mixed in with the dirty ones that untangling it all takes time." Sarah's expression softened slightly. "But we're close. Very close. And when we move on him, anyone connected to him goes down too. Wife, girlfriend, employee, doesn't matter. The DA wants to make an example." "So what do you want from me?" "I want you to walk away, go back to your life, find another job, forget Victor Reyes exists." Sarah stood, pulling out a business card. "But if you're stupid enough to take his deal, call me. We can offer you protection in exchange for testimony. It's a better deal than anything he's offering, and you might actually survive it." She left the card on the table and walked out, leaving Mia alone with her cold coffee and racing thoughts. Victor was a criminal, an actual criminal, not just the vaguely dangerous businessman she'd imagined, the kind who had people killed, who laundered money, who ran an empire built on violence and fear. She should run, should take Detective Chen's advice and disappear, change her name, move to another state, never look back. But $2 million. $2 million could buy safety in ways that running never could buy a new identity, a new life, a future where she wasn't constantly looking over her shoulder, waiting for the next disaster. And there was something else, something she didn't want to admit even to herself, a part of her that was tired of being invisible, tired of being the person things happened to instead of the person who made things happen. Victor had looked at her and seen someone useful, someone valuable. Even if it was manipulation, even if it was a lie, it felt better than being ignored. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Have you decided? V." Mia stared at the message, thumb hovering over the keyboard. This was the moment. The choice that would define everything that came after. She typed 3 letters and hit send before she could change her mind. Yes. The response came back instantly. Good. Car will pick you up at 6 p.m. Pack a bag. You're moving in tonight. Tonight? He wanted her to move into his house tonight, to jump into this insane arrangement with no time to think, no time to prepare. Classic manipulation tactic, a voice in her head whispered. Don't give her time to reconsider. But another voice, quieter, more desperate, said, what choice do you really have? Mia went back to the apartment and packed her life into 2 duffel bags. It didn't take long. She didn't own much. Clothes, toiletries, a few books. The photo of her parents she kept hidden under her pillow. Everything that mattered fit into luggage she could carry herself. Jen watched from the doorway of her bedroom, arms crossed. So you're just leaving? Just like that? I got a better opportunity. Right. Opportunity. Jen's voice dripped skepticism. What kind of opportunity has you packing up and moving out in one day? The kind that pays better than splitting rent 3 ways on a couch. Mia zipped her bag closed harder than necessary. I paid through the end of the month. You've got time to find someone else. Whatever. Your life. Jen disappeared back into her room, and Mia felt a surge of anger at how easy it was for people to not care, to not see her, to treat her like she was replaceable. Maybe that's why Victor's offer had felt so seductive. He saw her, wanted her. Even if the wanting was transactional, it was more than most people had ever given her. The car arrived exactly at 6, a black Mercedes with tinted windows and a driver who looked like he moonlighted as a bodyguard. He took her bags without a word and opened the back door, his face professionally blank. Mia slid into leather seats that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe and watched the city slip past through darkened glass. They drove away from her neighborhood, away from the pawn shops and check-cashing places and buildings covered in graffiti, and toward the part of town where houses had gates and lawns had landscaping. Victor's house sat at the end of a private drive, hidden behind walls and security cameras. It wasn't a mansion exactly, but it was close. 3 stories of modern architecture, all glass and steel in sharp angles. Lights glowed from inside, warm and inviting, completely at odds with the man who lived there. The driver led her through the front door into a foyer with marble floors and a staircase that curved up like something from a movie. Everything was pristine, cold, expensive. It looked like a showroom, not a home. Mia. Victor appeared from a doorway to the right, still in a suit despite the late hour. You came. You didn't really give me much choice with the timeline. I gave you a choice. You made it. He nodded to the driver, who disappeared with her bags. Come. We need to talk about how this works. He led her into a study lined with bookshelves, a massive desk dominating the space. Everything here screamed control, from the organized papers to the expensive art on the walls. This was a man who managed his life with the same ruthless efficiency he probably managed his criminal empire. Sit. He gestured to a chair across from the desk. Mia sat, hands clasped in her lap. So what now? Now we establish ground rules. Victor pulled out a folder, not unlike the one Detective Chen had shown her that morning, and slid it across the desk. This is a contract. It outlines the terms of our arrangement, including payment schedule, behavioral expectations, and dissolution terms. She opened it, scanning the dense legal language. You had this drawn up already? Before I even said yes? I had it drawn up the night I met you in the diner. He said it so casually, like pre-planning her entire life was perfectly normal. I told you, I don't make random decisions. Right, because I'm honest and invisible and desperate. The bitterness in her voice surprised her. Something flickered in his eyes. You're also smart enough to recognize opportunity when you see it. That's not desperation. That's survival instinct. A cop came to see me this morning. The words were out before she could stop them. Detective Sarah Chen. She showed me photos of dead bodies and told me you're a murderer. Victor didn't even blink. And yet you're here. She said when they arrest you, anyone connected to you goes down too. They won't arrest me. He said it with absolute certainty. Sarah Chen has been trying to build a case for years. She has nothing but circumstantial evidence and conspiracy theories. If she had anything real, I'd already be in prison. So you're saying you're not a criminal? I'm saying I'm very good at my job, And my job requires operating in gray areas that people like Detective Chen don't understand. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. Does it scare you? What she told you? Yes. Good. Fear means you're paying attention. He pulled out a pen, setting it on top of the contract. Here's what you need to understand, Mia. I'm offering you $2 million and a year of safety. In exchange, you play a role. You smile at the right people, attend the right events, and keep your mouth shut about anything you see or hear in this house. At the end of 12 months, we divorce, you take your money, and you disappear into whatever life you want to build. And if I screw up? If I can't play the role well enough? Then we terminate the contract early and you get a prorated payment based on months served. He pushed the contract closer. But I don't think you'll screw up. I think you're a lot stronger than you give yourself credit for. Mia picked up the pen, fingers trembling. When do we get married? Friday. Small ceremony, just a judge and 2 witnesses. Then Saturday night, we're attending a gala where Dmitry Volkov and his daughter will be present. That's when you meet the people this whole arrangement is designed to impress. 3 days. She had 3 days before her entire life changed. What if I can't do this? What if I'm not good enough at pretending? Victor stood, moving around the desk until he was close enough that she could smell his cologne. He crouched down, the same way he had in his office, bringing them eye to eye. You've been pretending your whole life, Mia. Pretending to be smaller than you are, quieter than you are, less than you are. This is just a different role. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. I'm not asking you to be someone else. I'm asking you to be the version of yourself you'd be if you weren't scared all the time. Something in his words hit too close to home. Mia looked away, blinking back tears she didn't want him to see. Sign the contract, he said, standing. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start preparing you for the role. She signed without reading the rest of it, each stroke of the pen feeling like she was signing away more than just a year of her life. When she finished, Victor took the contract and filed it in his desk with the same clinical efficiency he did everything else. Your room is upstairs, second door on the left. There's clothes in the closet. I had my assistant order basics in your size. If you need anything, there's a phone by the bed that connects to the house line. He moved toward the door, then paused. And Mia? The security here is significant. Cameras, guards, alarms. Don't try to leave the property without telling me first. Am I a prisoner? You're a very valuable asset. I protect my assets. He said it like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. Good night. He left her alone in the study with her racing heart and the ghost of her signature on a contract she barely understood. The room upstairs was bigger than her entire apartment had been. King-sized bed with sheets that probably had a thread count higher than her SAT scores, an ensuite bathroom with a tub that could fit 3 people, a walk-in closet filled with clothes that still had tags on them. Everything was elegant, expensive, impersonal. Mia sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself cry. Not from fear or regret, but from the overwhelming strangeness of it all. 12 hours ago, she'd been sleeping on a lumpy couch in an apartment that smelled like mildew. Now she was in a mansion, preparing to marry a man who might be a criminal, all for money she couldn't quite believe was real. She fell asleep in her clothes, too exhausted to even change, and dreamed of surveillance photos and wedding rings and Victor's dark eyes watching her like she was a puzzle he was determined to solve. Morning came too early. Someone knocked on her door at 7 a.m., a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an efficient manner who introduced herself as Margaret, the housekeeper. Mr. Reyes asked me to wake you. Breakfast is in 30 minutes, and you have a full day of appointments. Appointments? Hair, makeup, wardrobe consultation? Mr. Reyes wants you ready for the gala. Margaret smiled. Don't worry, dear. We'll have you looking like you belong in his world in no time. The next 3 days blurred together in a whirlwind of preparation that felt more like boot camp than wedding planning. Mia was poked and prodded and measured, her hair cut and colored, her eyebrows shaped, her skin subjected to treatments she didn't understand. A stylist named Andre spent 6 hours teaching her how to walk in heels, how to stand with confidence, how to enter a room like she owned it. You slouch, he said, tapping her shoulder blade with one manicured finger. Stop apologizing with your body. These people smell weakness like sharks smell blood. A woman named Catherine drilled her on social etiquette. which fork to use, how to make small talk, how to deflect personal questions with grace. Never give them real information, she instructed. You're mysterious, not secretive. There's a difference. Victor appeared periodically throughout the preparations, observing with that calculating gaze, occasionally making adjustments. The red dress? Not the blue. She needs color. Her posture is better, but her eye contact is still weak. Work on that. He spoke about her like she was a project, which she supposed she was. On Thursday night, he summoned her to his study. Tomorrow we get married. Tonight, we talk about the real reason for this arrangement. Mia sat across from him, wearing one of the new outfits Andre had picked out, a simple black dress that somehow made her look elegant instead of invisible. I thought the reason was Dmitry Volkov wanting to see you settled. That's part of it, but there's more you need to understand. He pulled out a file spreading photos across the desk. Dmitry Volkov, his daughter Elena, various other serious-looking men in expensive suits. Dmitry controls shipping routes that I need access to. He's old school, traditional, doesn't trust unmarried men because he thinks they have nothing to lose. But there's another player in this game. He added another photo. A man in his 40s with cold blue eyes and a smile that made Mia's skin crawl. Adrian Kane. He wants the same shipping routes, the same business relationships. He's been courting Elena Volkov for months, trying to secure an alliance through marriage. Victor's voice was flat, emotionless. If he succeeds, I lose access to resources I need. Resources worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So this is about business, just business. Everything is about business. He gathered the photos, filing them away. But Kane is also dangerous in ways that go beyond money. He's violent, unstable, has a habit of disposing of people who inconvenience him. If he gets control of Volkov's network, a lot of people will die. And you're better? Victor looked at her for a long moment. I'm pragmatic. I don't kill people who are useful to me, and I don't waste resources on pointless violence. Kane enjoys it. That's the difference. It was a distinction that should have terrified her. Instead, it felt almost reassuring in its cold logic. What happens at the gala? What do you need me to do? Be my wife. Laugh at my jokes, touch my arm occasionally. Look at me like you chose this instead of being paid for it. He stood, moving to the window. Dmitry will be watching every interaction, looking for signs that this is a transaction. If he thinks it's fake, the deal dies and Kane wins. So I have to convince a Russian crime boss that I'm in love with you. Essentially, he turned back to her, expression unreadable. Can you do that? Mia thought about the last 3 days, about being molded and shaped and trained like a show dog. Thought about the contract she'd signed and the money waiting for her at the end of this year. I can do whatever you need me to do. Something that might have been approval crossed his features. Good. Get some sleep. Tomorrow changes everything. The ceremony the next day was brutally efficient. A judge, 2 witnesses pulled from Victor's staff, and 10 minutes of legal phrases that bound Mia Bennett to Victor Reyes in a marriage that was real on paper and fake in every way that mattered. She wore a cream-colored dress that Andre had insisted made her look bridal without being obvious. Victor wore his usual suit. Neither of them smiled. When the judge pronounced them married and told Victor he could kiss his bride, he pressed his lips to hers in a kiss so brief and clinical it barely counted. But his hand was warm when he took hers, solid and real. And when he slid the wedding ring onto her finger, a platinum band with a diamond so large it felt obscene, Mia felt the weight of it like a chain. Mrs. Reyes, he said, and it sounded like a threat and a promise all at once. That night, lying alone in her bedroom while her new husband worked in his study downstairs, Mia twisted the ring around her finger and wondered what Detective Chen would think if she could see her now. Probably that she'd made a mistake that would get her killed. Maybe she was right. But the ring was real. The money would be real. And for the first time in her life, Mia Reyes, wasn't invisible. Even if the visibility came with a price she didn't fully understand yet, it felt better than fading into nothing. Tomorrow night, she'd meet Dmitry Volkov and his daughter. Tomorrow night, she'd step into Victor's world completely, playing a role that could either set her free or destroy her. She fell asleep with her hand on the pillow beside her, the diamond catching moonlight, and dreamed of nothing at all. The dress arrived at noon in a box so large it required 2 people to carry it upstairs. Mia watched from the bedroom doorway as Margaret and another staff member she didn't recognize maneuvered it through the hallway, exchanging quiet words in a language she didn't speak. "Mr. Reyes selected it himself," Margaret said, setting the box on the bed with reverent care. "He has excellent taste." Mia doubted Victor had personally shopped for anything in his life, but she didn't say that. Instead, she watched Margaret lift the lid, revealing layers of tissue paper that rustled like secrets being unwrapped. The gown was emerald green, the color of money and envy and deep water. The fabric caught the light as Margaret pulled it free, revealing a silhouette that would hug every curve before flowing to the floor. It was the kind of dress that demanded attention, that made invisibility impossible. "I can't wear that," Mia said, voice small. "Of course you can, dear. Try it on." She did, with Margaret's help, the older woman's efficient hands guiding her into the gown like she was being wrapped in armor. The fabric felt like water against her skin, cool and impossibly soft. When Margaret zipped it up and turned Mia toward the full-length mirror, she barely recognized herself. The woman staring back looked expensive, confident, like someone who belonged on Victor's arm at a gala full of criminals and socialites. "Beautiful," Margaret said, already reaching for the jewelry box on the dresser. Now the finishing touches. Emeralds to match the dress, a necklace that probably cost more than Mia's childhood home. Earrings that caught the light like tiny chandeliers. Margaret worked quickly, professionally, transforming Mia into someone she wasn't sure she wanted to be. A knock at the door made them both turn. Victor entered without waiting for permission because this was his house and every room in it belonged to him. He wore a tuxedo that fit him like it had been sewn directly onto his body, making him look even more dangerous than usual. His eyes swept over Mia, clinical and assessing, looking for flaws the way a jeweler examined a diamond for imperfections. "Turn around," he said. She did, slowly, feeling his gaze like a physical weight. When she faced him again, something had shifted in his expression. Not warmth exactly, but something close to approval. "That'll work," he said, which was probably the closest thing to a compliment she'd get. "We leave in 20 minutes. Margaret shooed him out, muttering something about bad luck, though they were already married, so Mia wasn't sure what luck they had left to preserve. The older woman finished with Mia's hair, pulling it into an elegant updo that revealed the column of her neck, making the emerald sparkle against her skin. "You look like you belong in his world now," Margaret said quietly. "Just remember, looking the part is half the battle. The other half is believing it yourself." Mia studied her reflection, trying to find herself beneath the makeup and jewelry and expensive fabric. The girl who'd served coffee at Sal's diner felt like a different person, someone from another lifetime. Maybe that was the point. The car waiting outside was different from the Mercedes that had brought her here. This one was a Bentley, all sleek lines and dark paint that seemed to absorb light. Victor held the door open for her, a gesture that would have seemed gentlemanly if it didn't feel so choreographed. "Remember what we talked about," he said as they pulled away from the house. "You're confident but not arrogant, interested in their conversation but not eager. And if anyone asks how we met, what do you say?" "We met at Elysium. I was working there. You pursued me. We fell in love quickly." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. "And if they ask why you were working at a nightclub?" "Putting myself through school, business degree." Another lie, another layer of fiction. "Good." He adjusted his cufflinks, a nervous gesture that surprised her because she didn't think Victor got nervous. "Dimitri will test you. He'll ask questions designed to trip you up, look for inconsistencies. Stay calm. If you don't know an answer, deflect with charm. Can you do that?" "I guess we'll find out." He looked at her sharply. "This isn't a game, Mia. These people are dangerous. If they think you're lying, if they suspect this marriage is a transaction, they'll kill both of us just to send a message." The casual way he said it, "they'll kill both of us," made her stomach drop. "You could have mentioned that before I signed the contract. Would it have changed your answer?" She wanted to say yes, wanted to believe she had that much self-preservation. But they both knew the truth. $2 million bought a lot of courage, or at least a lot of willingness to ignore danger. "Just tell me what I need to know about tonight," she said instead. "Who's going to be there besides Dimitri and Elena?" Victor pulled out his phone, swiping through photos. "Adrian Kane will definitely be there. He'll try to undermine us, make you feel small, out of place. Don't let him get to you. What does he look like? Victor showed her the same photo from the study. Cold blue eyes, predatory smile. He'll probably approach you when I'm not around. That's his style. Likes to isolate people, find their weaknesses. And if he does, you smile politely and walk away. Don't engage. Don't let him draw you into conversation. Victor's voice had gone cold, dangerous. And if he touches you, you find me immediately. The protective edge in his tone surprised her. This was supposed to be a business arrangement, nothing personal, but the way he said it suggested something else. Maybe he just didn't like other people touching his property. The gala was being held at the Ashford Estate, a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of the city that looked like it had been transported from European aristocracy. Cars lined the circular drive, each more expensive than the last. Women in gowns glittered like jewels as they ascended the steps on the arms of men in tuxedos, everyone playing their role in this theater of wealth and power. Victor helped Mia out of the car, his hand settling at the small of her back with practiced ease. To anyone watching, they looked like a couple, like this was real. "Breathe," he murmured as they climbed the steps. "You look terrified." "I am terrified." "Don't be. You're my wife. That makes you untouchable." He said it with such absolute certainty that for a moment she almost believed him. The interior of the estate was even more overwhelming than the exterior. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, artwork that probably belonged in museums. Servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that looked too beautiful to eat. The crowd was a mix of old money and new criminals, all dressed up and pretending to be civilized. Victor guided her through the room with his hand never leaving her back, nodding to people she didn't know, stopping occasionally for brief conversations that felt loaded with subtext she couldn't decode. Everyone looked at her with curiosity, assessing this new piece on Victor's arm. "Victor, how unexpected to see you here." The voice came from behind them, smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. They turned to find Adrian Kane approaching, flanked by two men who were clearly bodyguards trying to look like guests. Up close, he was even more unsettling than his photo suggested, handsome in a way that felt wrong, like something beautiful wrapped around something rotten. "Adrian," Victor's voice could have frozen blood. "I'm surprised they let you in. Thought you were still banned after that incident last year." Kane's smile didn't waver. "Ancient history." "And who is this lovely creature?" His eyes slid to Mia, lingering in a way that made her skin crawl. "My wife, Mia Reyes." "Wife." Kane laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. "Well, this is a development. When did this happen?" "Recently. We kept it private." Victor's hand tightened almost imperceptibly against Mia's back. A warning. "How romantic!" Kane stepped closer, and Mia caught the scent of his cologne. Expensive but cloying, too much of everything. "And where did Victor find you, Mrs. Reyes? You don't quite fit the usual profile of women in his orbit." Every instinct told her to shrink back, to apologize for existing. But she thought of Margaret's words, "Looking the part is half the battle," and forced herself to meet Kane's gaze. "He didn't find me. I found him." She let a small smile play at her lips. "Turns out, even dangerous men need saving sometimes." Something flickered in Kane's eyes. Surprise, maybe respect. Victor's hand relaxed against her back. "Charming," Kane said, though his tone suggested he found it anything but. "I look forward to getting to know you better, Mrs. Reyes. I'm sure we'll have plenty of opportunities." He drifted away into the crowd, his bodyguards following like shadows. Mia released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "That was good," Victor said quietly. "Better than good. You made him uncomfortable." "I thought I was supposed to avoid engaging with him." "You were. But what you did was better. You engaged without giving him anything to work with. He doesn't know what to make of you now." There was something almost like pride in his voice. "Come on, Dimitri's here." He led her toward the far side of the room where a small group had gathered around a man who radiated authority like heat from a fire. Dmitri Volkov was shorter than Mia had expected, stocky and solid, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. The woman beside him had to be Elena, late 20s, beautiful in a cold, untouchable way, wearing diamonds like they were armor. Victor approached with the kind of measured confidence that suggested he'd done this 1,000 times. "Dmitri, thank you for the invitation." Dmitri turned and his face transformed into something that might have been warmth if it reached his eyes. "Victor, I was beginning to think you'd stopped attending these things. I had nothing worth celebrating." "That's changed," Victor gestured to Mia. "This is my wife, Mia." Dmitri's gaze swept over her, sharp and assessing. Mia felt like she was being examined under a microscope, every flaw catalogued and measured. She forced herself to smile, to extend her hand with confidence she didn't feel. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Volkov." He took her hand, his grip firm but not crushing. "The pleasure is mine, Mrs. Reyes. Victor's marriage is surprising news." "Good surprises are rare in our world," Victor said smoothly. "I wasn't going to waste time with long engagements." "Clearly." Dmitri released Mia's hand, turning to his daughter. "Elena, this is Victor Reyes and his new wife." Elena's smile was polite and empty. "How lovely. Congratulations on your marriage." Her accent was barely there, just a hint of something European beneath perfect English. "You must tell me how you managed to capture Victor's attention. He's usually so focused on business." It was a test, delicately delivered. Mia could feel Victor's tension beside her, could sense that her answer mattered more than she understood. "I think it was mutual," she said carefully. "Sometimes you meet someone and everything else just becomes noise." "How poetic." Elena's expression didn't change. "And what did you do before you became Mrs. Reyes?" "I was finishing my business degree, working to pay for school." "Working where?" The question was sharp, pointed. Elena knew something or suspected something. Mia felt panic rising but kept her voice steady. "Various places. Retail, service industry, whatever paid the bills." "How admirably pragmatic." Dmitri's voice carried a note of approval. Elena could learn something from that attitude. She's never worked a day in her life. "Father." Elena's composure cracked slightly. "It's true. You were born into privilege, as was I. But people who've had to fight for survival understand the value of things." He looked at Mia with new interest. "You seem like someone who understands value, Mrs. Reyes." "I understand that nothing comes free," Mia said, and meant it more than anything she'd said all night. "Everything has a price." Dmitri laughed, a genuine sound that made several heads turn. "I like her, Victor. She has spine." He clapped Victor on the shoulder with enough force to make it clear he could break bones if he wanted. "We should talk business next week. I think we may have more common ground than I initially thought." "I'd like that." Victor's voice was carefully neutral, but Mia could feel the tension draining from him. This was what tonight had been about, getting Dmitri to see him as someone settled, someone trustworthy. They talked for a few more minutes about nothing important before Dmitri and Elena moved on to greet other guests. The moment they were out of earshot, Victor's hand found Mia's again. "You did well," he said quietly. "Better than I expected." "He liked me because I'm not one of them, because I had to work." "He liked you because you didn't apologize for it. These people respect strength, even when it comes wrapped in evening gowns." Victor guided her toward the bar. "You need a drink. So do I." The bartender poured champagne without being asked, clearly familiar with Victor's preferences. Mia took a glass and drank too fast, the bubbles burning her throat. "Slow down," Victor murmured. "You need to stay sharp." "I know, She looked around at the crowd, at all these people playing their roles in games she barely understood. "This is exhausting. Welcome to my world." There was something almost sympathetic in his voice. "It never gets easier. You just get better at pretending it doesn't bother you." A woman's laugh cut through the ambient noise, sharp and cruel. Mia turned toward the sound and found a small group of women clustered near the windows, all of them looking in her direction. One of them, a brunette in a red dress that probably cost more than a car, was saying something that made the others laugh. "Ignore them," Victor said, following her gaze. "They're not important." But Mia could read body language well enough to know they were talking about her. About the girl in the green dress who didn't belong, who'd somehow managed to trick Victor Reyes into marriage. The brunette detached from her group and approached, her smile friendly in a way that set off every alarm bell Mia possessed. "Victor, darling, aren't you going to introduce us to your mysterious bride?" "Mia, this is Catherine Ashford," She's hosting tonight. Victor's voice carried a warning edge. Catherine, my wife Mia. Wife. Still getting used to that word associated with you. Catherine's eyes were sharp, calculating. I have to ask, dear, where exactly did you two meet? The story seems to change depending on who's telling it. It doesn't change, Mia said, keeping her voice even. We met at Elysium. I was working there. Working. Catherine drew the word out, making it sound vaguely dirty. How industrious. And what did your family think of you marrying into Victor's world so quickly? It was a trap, designed to expose that Mia had no family worth mentioning, that she came from nothing. The old Mia would have stammered out an excuse, apologized for existing. But the new Mia, the one wearing emeralds and a wedding ring that weighed like a promise, was tired of apologizing. They're dead, she said flatly. Car accident when I was 16, but I'm sure you already knew that, or you wouldn't have asked. Catherine's smile faltered. Around them, the nearby conversations had gone quiet, people pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean… Yes, you did. Mia set down her champagne glass with more force than necessary. You wanted to make me feel small, point out that I don't belong here. So let me save you some time, you're right. I don't come from money or privilege. I worked at a diner before Elysium. I lived in an apartment where the heat didn't work, and I ate ramen most nights because that's what I could afford. And yes, I married Victor quickly, because when someone offers you a chance at something better, you take it. The silence around them had spread like a ripple, more people turning to watch. Mia felt Victor's hand settle on her back again, steady and solid. But here's what you need to understand, she continued, voice stronger now. I earned my place at his side. I didn't buy it with family connections or inherited wealth. So if you want to mock me for being poor, for working service jobs, for not being born into your world, go ahead. I've survived worse than your judgment. Catherine's face had gone red, anger and embarrassment warring for dominance. I don't think… No, you don't. Victor's voice cut through like a blade. And that's your problem, Catherine. You think money and breeding make you better than people who've actually had to fight for survival. Mia's worth 10 of you, and everyone in this room knows it. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Catherine looked between them, seeming to realize she'd miscalculated badly. Around them, the crowd had shifted. Some faces showed approval, others uncertainty. But no one was laughing anymore. I apologize if I offended you, Catherine said stiffly. That wasn't my intention. Of course it wasn't. Mia picked up her champagne again, surprised to find her hand wasn't shaking. We all make mistakes. Catherine retreated with as much dignity as she could manage, her group of friends following like nervous birds. The conversations around them resumed, but Mia could feel the weight of attention still fixed on her. We should dance, Victor said suddenly. What? They're all watching us. We need to give them something to see. He set down his drink and offered his hand. Come on. The dance floor was already crowded with couples swaying to something classical and elegant. Victor led her to the center, his hand settling at her waist with the same practiced ease he did everything else. Mia placed her hand on his shoulder, acutely aware of how close they were, how many eyes were tracking their every movement. I didn't know you could dance, she said as he guided her into the rhythm. I can do a lot of things you don't know about. His voice was quiet, meant only for her. What you did back there, standing up to Catherine, that was either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. Definitely both. But there was something like admiration in his tone. You surprised me. I thought you'd let her walk all over you. I'm tired of being walked over. Mia met his eyes, dark and unreadable. You said I needed to believe I belonged here. Well, maybe I'm starting to. Or maybe you're just better at pretending than you thought. He spun her, the movement smooth and practiced, and for a moment Mia forgot this was all an act, forgot the contract and the money and the danger lurking beneath the surface of this beautiful night. When the dance ended, Dmitri appeared at Victor's elbow, like he'd been waiting for the right moment. That was quite a performance, he said, though whether he meant the dance or the confrontation with Catherine wasn't clear. Your wife has fire, I respect that. She's full of surprises, Victor agreed. Good. I don't trust people who are easy to read. Dmitri turned to Mia. Walk with me, Mrs. Reyes. I'd like to speak with you privately. Every alarm bell in Mia's head started screaming. Victor's hand tightened briefly on her waist before releasing her. Of course, she said, because what else could she say? Dmitri led her away from the crowd, toward a terrace that overlooked gardens lit by carefully placed lights. The night air was cool against her skin, a relief after the heat of the ballroom. They stood in silence for a moment, and Mia fought the urge to fill it with nervous chatter. You love him, Dmitri said finally. It wasn't a question. Yes. The lie came easier than she'd expected. Why? The question threw her. I don't think love works on logic. Perhaps not, but it works on something. He turned to face her fully. I've known Victor for 5 years. In that time, I've seen him build an empire, make enemies, destroy people who crossed him. What I've never seen is vulnerability, until tonight, watching him watch you. Mia's heart hammered. I don't understand. When Catherine attacked you, Victor was ready to burn her entire world down. I saw it in his eyes. Dmitri smiled, but it was cold. That's not business. That's personal. So either you've managed to make him care about you in a matter of weeks, or you're both playing a game so sophisticated I haven't figured it out yet. This was it. The moment where everything could collapse. Mia thought about Detective Chen's warnings, about the bodies in the river, about the danger she'd walked into with open eyes. Mr. Volkov, I don't know what you want me to say. I'm not playing games. I'm trying to survive in a world I don't understand, next to a man who scares me as much as he... She stopped herself, but too late. As he what? Dmitri prompted. As much as he makes me feel safe, she finished quietly, and realized with a jolt that it was true. Victor was dangerous, possibly evil, definitely manipulative, but he'd also protected her, defended her, made her feel valuable for the first time in her life. Dmitri studied her for a long moment. You're either very clever or very honest. I haven't decided which. Can I be both? He laughed, genuine amusement lighting his face. Perhaps you can. Very well, Mrs. Reyes, you've passed my test. I'll do business with your husband. Relief flooded through her. Just like that? Just like that. Victor has what I need. I have what he needs. But more importantly, he has you. And you have something I haven't seen in this world in a very long time. Dmitri moved toward the terrace doors. Integrity. Don't lose it. The moment you become like the rest of us, you'll lose whatever power you have over him. He left her alone on the terrace, head spinning. She'd done it. Whatever test Dmitri had been running, she'd passed. The deal was happening. Victor found her a few minutes later, his expression unreadable. What did he say? He asked if I loved you. I said yes. Mia turned to face him. He said he saw you were willing to destroy Catherine for me, and that meant it was either real or we were playing a sophisticated game. And what did you tell him? The truth. That you scare me and make me feel safe at the same time. She searched his face for some reaction. He said he'd do business with you. Victor's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. You're better at this than I expected. Everyone keeps saying that, like you all expected me to fail. We expected you to be adequate. You're exceeding expectations. He offered his arm. Come on, let's make our exit. We've accomplished what we came for. The drive home was quiet, both of them processing the night in their own ways. Mia watched the city lights blur past, exhausted down to her bones, but also strangely exhilarated. She'd stood in a room full of dangerous people and held her own. Had defended herself against mockery, passed Dmitri's test, played the role of Victor's wife well enough to convince a man who'd built an empire on reading people. Back at the house, Victor followed her upstairs, something he'd never done before. He stopped at her bedroom door, seeming uncertain for the first time since she'd met him. What you said to Dmitri? About feeling safe. His voice was quiet. Did you mean it? Mia thought about lying, about maintaining the professional distance they were supposed to have. But she was too tired for more games. Yes, I know you're dangerous. I know you've probably done terrible things, but you've also protected me, defended me, made me feel like I matter. She met his eyes. Is that part of the act too? I don't know anymore. He said it so quietly she almost missed it. Good night, Mia. He walked to his own room, leaving her standing in the hallway wearing emeralds and questions she couldn't answer. Inside her bedroom, Mia took off the jewelry with shaking hands, each piece feeling heavier than it should. She'd survived her first real test in Victor's world, had proven she could play the role convincingly enough to fool people who made careers out of deception. But somewhere in the middle of the performance, something had shifted. The lies had started feeling like truth. The pretending had become real in ways that terrified her. She fell asleep with her wedding ring still on, its weight familiar now, and dreamed of dancing with a dangerous man who looked at her like she was worth protecting, like she was worth something more than money. The weeks that followed blurred together in a strange rhythm that felt almost like real life. Mia woke in silk sheets, ate breakfast in a kitchen bigger than her old apartment, and spent her days learning to be someone she'd never imagined becoming. Victor was gone most mornings before she woke, handling business she didn't ask about, returning late with tension in his shoulders that only eased when he found her still awake. They fell into a routine that looked like marriage from the outside. Dinners together when his schedule allowed, conversations that started as briefings and ended as something more. He told her about deals with Dmitri, about shipping routes and territories, speaking to her like she was a partner instead of hired help. She told him about her childhood, about parents she barely remembered, and a life spent trying to be invisible. "Why invisible?" he asked one night over wine in his study, the question genuinely curious. Because being seen meant being noticed. Being noticed meant being vulnerable. She swirled the wine in her glass, watching the light catch in the dark liquid. When you're poor, when you're alone, the best survival strategy is to not exist loudly enough for anyone to hurt you. And now? Now I'm the opposite of invisible. She gestured at the house around them, at the ring on her finger. Everyone sees me. It's terrifying. You hide it well. He refilled her glass without asking. At the gala, you looked like you'd been doing this your whole life. I was faking. We're all faking something. His eyes met hers over the rim of his glass. The difference is, you're honest about it. Those moments, quiet and unguarded, made it harder to remember this was temporary. Made it easier to forget the contract sitting in his desk drawer, counting down the months until she could take her money and disappear. The danger came on a Tuesday. Mia was reading in the library when she heard raised voices from Victor's study. She'd learned to recognize the different tones of his business conversations, the smooth negotiations, the calculated threats, the cold finality of deals going bad. This was none of those. This was anger, raw and barely controlled. She set down her book and moved quietly toward the study, not quite eavesdropping, but not quite walking away either. Don't care what Kane thinks he has. He's bluffing. Victor's voice, sharp enough to cut. A response she couldn't hear, then Victor again. Then we move up the timeline. The shipment comes in Friday instead of next week. More conversation, muffled. Mia pressed closer to the door. If he tries anything, we handle it, permanently. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Mia's blood went cold. She'd known intellectually that Victor was dangerous, that his world operated on violence. But hearing it stated so casually made it real in a way it hadn't been before. She backed away from the door and nearly collided with Margaret, who'd appeared silently behind her. "Mrs. Reyes," the older woman's voice was gentle but firm. "Perhaps you'd like some tea in the garden?" It wasn't a suggestion. Margaret led her outside to the terrace where they'd had breakfast that first morning, setting down a tray with practiced efficiency. "How much did you hear?" Margaret asked quietly. "Enough to know I should probably be more scared than I am. Mr. Reyes would never let anything happen to you." "That's not what I'm scared of." Mia wrapped her hands around the teacup, seeking warmth. "I'm scared of what he is, what this all is." Margaret sat down across from her, something she'd never done before. The gesture felt significant, like they were crossing a line from employer-employee to something else. "Can I tell you something?" Margaret's voice was soft. "I've worked for Mr. Reyes for 8 years. In that time, I've seen him make hard decisions, do things that kept me awake at night. But I've also seen him protect the people under his care with a loyalty that's rare in this world. He's not a good man, Mrs. Reyes, but he's not as bad as people think either." "How do you know?" "Because bad men don't build hospitals in neighborhoods the city forgot. They don't fund scholarships for kids with no chance. They don't cry when they think no one's watching." Margaret's eyes were kind. "Whatever Mr. Reyes is, He's more complicated than the rumors suggest. Before Mia could respond, Victor appeared in the doorway, his expression still dark from whatever conversation had just ended. Mia, inside, now. Margaret stood quickly, gathering the tea service. Mia followed Victor back into the house, her heart hammering. His tone had been cold, commanding, nothing like the man who'd shared wine with her and talked about honest faking. In the study, he closed the door and turned to face her. How much did you hear? Not much. Something about Kane and a shipment. Don't lie to me. I'm not. You were standing outside the door. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending otherwise. He moved to the window, looking out at the grounds with his back to her. This is exactly why I didn't want you involved in the business side. I wasn't trying to get involved. I heard voices and what? Got curious? He spun around, anger flashing in his eyes. This isn't a game, Mia. The things you might overhear could get you killed if the wrong people think you know too much. Then maybe you should tell me what's actually going on instead of keeping me in the dark. But her own anger rose to meet his. I'm not just decoration, Victor. I'm your wife, at least on paper. If I'm in danger, I deserve to know why. They stared at each other, tension crackling between them like electricity. Finally, Victor's shoulders dropped slightly, some of the anger draining away. Kane is making moves against the Volkov deal. He's threatening to hijack a shipment that's critical to finalizing our agreement with Dmitri. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. If he succeeds, everything we've built falls apart. Dmitri will think I can't protect my own interests, and the deal dies. So what are you going to do? What I have to. The words were heavy, final. And you're going to stay here, stay safe, and pretend you don't know anything about it. Victor, this isn't negotiable. He moved closer, and she could see the exhaustion beneath the anger. I can handle Kane. What I can't handle is worrying about whether you're safe while I'm dealing with him. So please, for once, just do what I ask. The please caught her off guard. Victor didn't ask. He commanded, controlled, demanded. Hearing that word from him felt like seeing behind a mask she hadn't realized he was wearing. Okay, she said quietly. I'll stay out of it. He nodded, some of the tension leaving his frame. Thank you. She left him there, surrounded by papers and phones and the weight of whatever violence was coming. In her room, Mia sat on the bed and tried not to think about Margaret's words. He's not a good man, but he's not as bad as people think. The problem was, she was starting to care which one he actually was. Friday came with unseasonable cold, the kind that made the house feel empty despite its size. Victor had left before dawn without saying goodbye. Just a note on the kitchen counter that said, "Stay inside, don't answer the door for anyone." Mia spent the morning restless, unable to focus on anything. She tried reading, tried watching television, tried anything to distract herself from imagining what Victor was doing and whether he'd come home. Around noon, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Sarah Chen." Mia stared at the message, Detective Chen's warnings from weeks ago echoing in her head. She shouldn't respond, should delete it and pretend she never saw it. She typed back anyway. "How did you get this number?" "I'm a detective. Getting numbers is what I do. Meet me at the coffee shop on 5th and Main. 1 hour. Come alone." Every instinct screamed trap. But something else. Curiosity, fear, a desperate need to understand what was really happening, made her grab her coat. She left through the back entrance, avoiding the security cameras she'd learned to spot, and caught a cab 3 blocks away. The coffee shop was the same one where Chen had approached her before, and the detective was already there, sitting at the same table like no time had passed. "You came," Chen said as Mia sat down. "I wasn't sure you would." "I probably shouldn't have." "Probably not." Chen slid a folder across the table. "But I think you'll want to see this." Inside were more photos, but these were different from before. Not surveillance shots or crime scenes, these were personal. Photos of Victor from years ago, younger and harder, standing next to people Mia didn't recognize. And one photo that made her blood run cold. Victor with a young woman, both of them smiling in a way that looked genuine. The woman was beautiful, dark hair, bright eyes, the kind of face that made you want to know her story. "Who is that?" Mia's voice came out rough. "Anna Volkov, Dmitri's younger sister. She died 3 years ago." Chen tapped the photo. She and Victor were in love, planning to get married. Then she was killed in what the official report called a robbery gone wrong. Mia's world tilted. What does this have to do with anything? Everything. Victor's been playing a long game for 3 years. The business deal with Dmitri? That's not about shipping routes. That's about revenge. Chen pulled out more documents. We think Victor knows who killed Anna. We think that person is protected by someone in Dmitri's organization, someone high up enough that going after them directly would start a war Victor can't win. So he's getting close to Dmitri to, what, find the killer? To earn enough trust that when he presents evidence, Dmitri will believe him. Will help him destroy whoever took Anna from him. Chen's eyes were sharp. You're not just a wife, Mia. You're a weapon. A way to prove to Dmitri that Victor can be trusted, that he's stable enough to marry and build a legitimate life. Once he has what he needs, he won't need you anymore. The words hit like physical blows. Mia thought about the quiet dinners, the conversations, the way Victor looked at her sometimes like she was real instead of purchased. I don't believe you. Then you're a fool. Chen gathered the photos. Kane isn't just a business rival. He's the one who killed Anna. We can't prove it, but we know it. And today, right now, Victor is probably killing him. That's what this shipment thing is, a setup to get Kane alone and vulnerable. If you know all this, why aren't you stopping it? Because we want Kane dead too. He's responsible for at least a dozen murders we can't prosecute because witnesses disappear. Chen's smile was cold. The difference is, when Victor kills him, Victor goes down for it. We've got surveillance, we've got evidence, we've got everything we need to finally put Victor Reyes away for good. And me? What happens to me? That depends. You can walk away now, cooperate with us, testify to the marriage being a sham. We'll protect you, relocate you if necessary. Or you can stay loyal to a man who's been using you from the beginning and go to prison as an accessory when this all falls apart. Chen stood. You've got until Monday to decide. After that, we move whether you're with us or not. She left Mia alone with the photos and the terrible weight of choices that all felt wrong. The cab ride home felt like drowning. Mia clutched the folder Chen had left, unable to stop looking at the photo of Victor and Anna. The way he smiled in it was different from anything she'd seen. Open, genuine, happy. Like he'd been someone else before loss had carved him into something harder. Back at the house, she went straight to Victor's study. She knew she shouldn't, but she needed to know if Chen was lying or telling the truth. In the bottom drawer of his desk, hidden under business files, she found another photo album. More pictures of Victor and Anna. Pictures of a life that looked normal, happy, real. And tucked in the back, a newspaper clipping about her death. Aspiring photographer, killed in downtown robbery. Mia's hands shook as she read the article. Anna had been shot 3 times, her camera stolen, her wallet left behind. The kind of killing that made no sense unless it was meant to send a message. What are you doing? The voice from the doorway made her jump. Victor stood there, suit jacket torn, blood on his shirt. Not his own, she hoped. His expression colder than she'd ever seen it. I asked you a question. Detective Chen showed me photos of you and Anna. Mia held up the album. She said this whole thing, the marriage, the deal with Dmitri, it's all about revenge for her death. Victor went very still. She had no right to tell you that. So it's true. Parts of it. He moved into the room, closing the door behind him. Anna was Dmitri's sister. We were engaged. Someone killed her and made it look like a random crime. That part's true. And the rest? About me being a weapon? About Kane. Kane is dead. He said it flatly, emotionlessly. I killed him 2 hours ago in a warehouse on the docks. Made it look like a deal gone bad. But Chen probably has it on surveillance anyway. So yes, I'm probably going to prison for it. The casual admission hit Mia like a punch. You just killed someone. I killed the man who murdered the woman I loved, who shot her 3 times and laughed while she bled out, all because Dmitri's organization was encroaching on his territory. Victor's voice was dead, empty. I've been planning it for 3 years, built everything, the business, the connections, this marriage, to get close enough to make him pay. The marriage, Mia's voice cracked. So Chen was right. I was just part of the plan. At first, yes. He looked at her directly, and there was something broken in his eyes. I needed a wife to convince Dmitri I was stable. I chose you because you were honest, controllable, desperate enough to say yes. It was calculated. All of it. Each word felt like a knife. The wallet. In the diner. You didn't lose it. I left it there. I'd been watching you for weeks. Knew your schedule. Knew you'd find it. His voice was mechanical, like he was reciting facts. I knew you'd call. Knew you'd be exactly what I needed. You manipulated me from the beginning. Yes. The simple admission was worse than any excuse would have been. Mia felt tears burning, but refused to let them fall. And everything since? The dinners, the conversations, defending me at the gala? That wasn't manipulation. For the first time, emotion crept into his voice. That was me forgetting what this was supposed to be. Getting attached when I shouldn't have. Caring about you when I'd sworn I'd never care about anyone again after Anna. Don't. The word came out sharp. Don't you dare try to make this romantic. You used me, bought me, built our entire relationship on lies. I know. He sat down heavily in his desk chair, suddenly looking exhausted. And now it's over. Kane's dead. Chen has her evidence, and in a few hours, federal agents are probably going to arrest me for murder. The deal with Dmitri is finalized. He knows now that Kane killed Anna, knows I did what family should do. So my revenge is complete and my freedom is finished. What about me? You take the money from the contract and disappear. Change your name, move somewhere far from here. Build the life you were supposed to have before I destroyed it. He pulled out an envelope from his desk. There's $2 million in bearer bonds, untraceable, plus an extra $1 million for... He stopped, jaw tightening. For making you believe any of this was real. Mia stared at the envelope like it was a snake. You think money fixes this? No, but it's all I have to give you. He stood, moving toward the door. I need to clean up before they come. You should pack. Be ready to leave as soon as... I don't want your money. He turned back, surprise flickering across his face. What? I said I don't want it. Not like this. She threw the envelope back on his desk. You don't get to buy your way out of guilt, Victor. You don't get to tell me this was all manipulation and then pay me off like I'm just another transaction. Then what do you want? I want the truth, all of it. She moved closer, angry and hurt and desperate. Did any of it mean anything? Even one moment, one conversation, one look? Was any of it real? He stared at her for a long moment, something warring in his expression. Yes. Which parts? All of it. His voice broke slightly. Every part that wasn't supposed to matter. Every time I told myself to keep distance and couldn't. Every time you smiled or challenged me or looked at me like I was someone worth knowing instead of just someone to fear. That was real, Mia. And that's why I have to let you go before I destroy you the way I destroy everything I touch. Before she could respond, the sound of cars pulling up outside made them both freeze. Through the window, Mia saw black SUVs, federal agents spilling out with tactical gear and weapons drawn. They're here, Victor said quietly. You need to go, now, out the back, through the gardens. There's a gate that leads to the neighbor's property. Run and don't look back. What? No, Mia, please. He grabbed her shoulders, and his hands were shaking. Let me do this one thing right. Let me protect you from the consequences of my choices. Go. Heavy footsteps echoed from downstairs. Voices shouting, Federal agents, we have a warrant! Victor's hands cupped her face, and for one suspended moment time stopped. He looked at her like he was memorizing her features, burning them into memory. I'm sorry, he whispered. For all of it, but mostly for making you care. Then he kissed her, brief and desperate and completely different from their wedding kiss, and pushed her toward the back door. Go! Mia ran. Through the study's rear exit down the hallway, out into the gardens. Behind her, she heard the front door being breached, heard agents shouting commands, heard Victor's voice calm and cold as he surrendered. She made it to the back gate and stopped, hands on the wrought iron, lungs burning. She could keep running, could take the money, disappear, build a new life somewhere Victor's choices couldn't touch her. Or she could go back. It was insane. He'd manipulated her, used her, built their entire relationship on calculated lies. She should hate him, should want him to rot in prison for what he'd done to her, to Kane, to everyone he'd touched. But she thought about Margaret's words. He's not as bad as people think. Thought about Victor's face when he talked about Anna, about the hospitals and scholarships, about the way he'd defended her at the gala like she actually mattered. Thought about the broken look in his eyes when he'd said, "Let me do this one thing right." She turned around and walked back to the house. The foyer was full of federal agents, all of them pointing weapons at Victor, who knelt on the marble floor with his hands behind his head. Detective Chen stood to one side, satisfaction written across her face. "Mia Bennett," Chen said, seeing her in the doorway. "Smart choice, coming back. We'll need your statement about Reyes. My name is Mia Reyes." She walked further into the room, every eye tracking her movement. "And I'm not giving you a statement. I'm invoking spousal privilege." Chen's expression darkened. "You can't—" "Yes, I can. I'm his wife, legally married, which means I can't be compelled to testify against him, and anything I might have witnessed is protected." She moved to stand beside Victor, who was staring at her like she'd lost her mind. Maybe she had. "You're making a mistake," Chen said. "Probably. But it's my mistake to make." Mia looked down at Victor, still kneeling with agents surrounding him. "And I'm tired of other people making choices for me." They arrested him anyway, of course, hauled him out in handcuffs while reading rights he probably knew better than the agents reciting them. But before they put him in the car, he looked back at her one last time. "Why?" he mouthed. She didn't have an answer, not one that made sense. So she just watched as they drove him away, taking with them the man who'd bought her, used her, and somehow made her care anyway. The trial took 6 months to reach court. 6 months of lawyers and depositions and media coverage that turned Mia's life inside out. The shy waitress who'd married a criminal became headline news. Her photo plastered across papers with speculation about whether she'd known, whether she'd helped, whether she'd been a victim or an accomplice. Through it all, she refused to testify, refused to turn on Victor even when the prosecutor offered her immunity, even when her lawyer said she was destroying her own life to protect a man who'd manipulated her. "He manipulated me," she told her lawyer, "but he also saw me when I was invisible, protected me when I was scared, and loved someone enough to spend 3 years planning revenge for her death. That's not nothing." The evidence against Victor was overwhelming. Surveillance footage from the warehouse, ballistics matching the gun to Kane's murder, financial records connecting everything to Victor's long game of vengeance. But Dmitry Volkov surprised everyone by testifying for the defense. "Victor Reyes did what I would have done for my sister," he said from the stand, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "He honored her memory the way our world honors the dead, with justice when the law fails. Kane was a murderer who would never have faced trial. Someone had to stop him." The jury deliberated for 3 days. Mia sat in the courtroom gallery every day, watching Victor's impassive face as they discussed his fate. He never looked at her, never acknowledged her presence, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands gripped the table. When the verdict came back, guilty of voluntary manslaughter, reduced from first-degree murder, Victor's mask slipped for just a moment. Relief, exhaustion, something close to peace. 12 years. With good behavior, he could be out in 8. After the sentencing, they allowed Mia a brief visit before he was transferred to federal prison. They sat across from each other in a bare room with guards watching, a table between them that felt like an ocean. "You should have run," Victor said finally. "Should have taken the money and disappeared." "I tried. Made it to the back gate." She twisted her wedding ring, a gesture that had become habit. "But I couldn't." "Why not?" "Because despite everything you did, everything you are, you made me feel like I mattered, like I was worth protecting." She met his eyes. "And because I saw you with Anna in those photos, saw what you look like when you love someone without calculation or manipulation, and I thought maybe, someday, you could look at someone like that again." "Mia, I'm not asking for anything," she interrupted. "I'm not delusional enough to think this is a love story, but I'm also not going to pretend the last few months didn't change me. You wanted me to stop being invisible? Mission accomplished. Now I have to figure out who I am when people are actually looking. What will you do? Finish my degree? Real this time, not the lie we told people. Maybe work with Margaret. She offered me a job managing the foundations you set up. Apparently someone needs to keep running the hospitals and scholarships while you're..." She gestured at the prison around them. "Here's..." Something that might have been a smile crossed his face. That sounds right. You helping people instead of just surviving. Yeah, well, you taught me that sometimes surviving isn't enough. She stood, knowing their time was almost up. I'll visit, if you want me to. You shouldn't waste your time on… Victor. She cut him off. Stop deciding what I should do. I'm visiting. Deal with it. He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw ghosts of conversations they'd had, dinners they'd shared, moments when the lies had felt like truth. Okay, he said quietly. I'll be here. 8 years later, on a Tuesday that felt like any other day, Mia waited outside federal prison gates in a car she'd bought with money from her actual job, wearing clothes she'd chosen herself, being exactly the person she'd built from the ashes of who she used to be. The gates opened. Victor walked out, older and harder, and somehow more human than he'd been when he went in. His eyes scanned the parking lot until they found her car, found her face through the windshield. She got out, leaning against the hood, trying to look casual when her heart was hammering like it might break through her ribs. He walked to her slowly, like he was afraid she might disappear. Up close she could see the changes, more gray in his hair, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before, something softer in his expression. You came, he said. I told you I would. 8 years ago. You didn't believe me. I've learned not to underestimate you. He looked at the car, at her, at the wedding ring she still wore despite everything. You kept it. It's mine. I earned it. She held up her hand, letting the diamond catch the light. Besides, returning it felt too much like giving up. On what? On figuring out if the man who bought me could become the man who chose me. She opened the passenger door. Get in. We have a lot to talk about. They drove in silence for a while, the city spreading out around them like possibility. Victor stared out the window like he was seeing the world for the first time. I don't deserve this, he said finally. You waiting. Visiting all those years, still being here now. Well, probably not. But I stopped doing things because I deserved them a long time ago. Started doing them because I wanted to. She glanced at him. Question is, what do you want? Real answer, no manipulation, no strategy. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, quietly, a second chance. To do this right. To choose you instead of using you. That's a nice thought. But what does it actually mean? I don't know yet. His hand moved toward hers on the gear shift, then stopped, uncertain. I spent 8 years thinking about what I did to you. How I saw you in that diner and decided you were perfect, honest, desperate, controllable. How I engineered everything to make you fall into my trap. And how somewhere in the middle of using you, I forgot it was supposed to be fake. Mia pulled over, parking on a side street because this conversation required full attention. When did you forget? The night you stood up to Catherine, when you stopped apologizing for existing and started claiming space. His voice was rough. I saw you transform into someone powerful, and I realized I'd created something I hadn't planned for. A woman who could choose to leave me and survive just fine. Maybe even thrive. And that scared you. Terrified me. Because it meant my control was an illusion. You stayed because you wanted to, not because you had to. And that was more valuable than anything I could have bought or manipulated. He finally took her hand, his touch tentative. So yes, I want a second chance, but only if you want it too. Real choice this time. No money, no contracts, no revenge plots. Just me. Asking if you'd be willing to try this again without the lies. Mia looked at their joined hands, his scarred from 8 years of prison work, hers steady and strong. She thought about the girl in Sal's diner, about the woman who'd married a stranger for money, about all the versions of herself she'd been and buried and become. I visited you every month for 8 years, she said. Brought you books and news and stories about the foundations, told you about finishing my degree, about the community centers we opened, about every small victory and large disaster. You know why? Why? Because somewhere in the middle of your manipulation, I fell in love with the person you could have been if loss hadn't broken you, and I wanted to be there when you put yourself back together. She squeezed his hand. So yes, I'm willing to try, but on one condition. Anything. No more lies. Not little ones, not big ones, not ones designed to protect me. We do this honestly, or we don't do it at all. Deal. He raised her hand to his lips, the gesture achingly gentle. Thank you. For waiting. For seeing something in me worth saving. Don't thank me yet. I'm not easy anymore. You made sure of that. Good. Easy is boring. She laughed despite herself, despite everything, despite the absurdity of falling in love with the man who'd bought her like property and then spent 8 years in prison for murder. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't even a particularly good love story. But it was theirs, messy and complicated and built on a foundation of lies that had somehow transformed into truth. They drove to the house where it had all started, now empty because Mia had been living in the city. She'd kept it maintained, kept it ready, some part of her always believing this day would come. Inside, everything was exactly as Victor had left it, frozen in time like a museum of their strange beginning. He moved through the room slowly, touching furniture, looking at photos, remembering. In the study, he found the contract they'd signed, still filed in his desk where he'd left it all those years ago. He pulled it out, looking at her signature, at the terms that had started everything. What do we do with this? He asked. Mia took it from him, scanning the pages of legalese that had bound them together. Burn it. We don't need it anymore. They went outside to the terrace where Dmitri had tested her, where she'd first realized she was stronger than she thought. Victor lit a match and held it to the contract, both of them watching as the paper caught and burned, flames consuming the words that had brought them together. As the last of it turned to ash, Victor pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her with the desperate certainty of someone who'd lost everything and found it again. I love you, he said into her hair. I should have said it years ago, should have admitted it before I destroyed everything. But I'm saying it now. I love you, Mia. Not the woman I tried to create, but the woman you became despite me. She turned in his arms, looking up at him. I love you too. Even though you're a criminal and a manipulator, and you killed a man. Those are significant character flaws. Yeah, well, nobody's perfect. She kissed him, and it was nothing like their wedding kiss or the desperate one before his arrest. This was real, messy and imperfect and completely honest. They stayed on the terrace until the sun set, talking about the future they'd build together. No contracts this time, no manipulation, no revenge plots. Just two damaged people who'd found each other in the worst possible way and somehow made it work anyway. What do we tell people? Mia asked as night fell around them. About how we met, how this started? Victor thought about it, his arms still around her. The truth, I think. That I was a broken man who saw a desperate woman and decided to use her, and that she was strong enough to transform both of us in the process. That's not very romantic. No, but it's honest, and you said no more lies. I did say that. She leaned into him, feeling safe in a way that had nothing to do with money or protection. Okay, truth it is, even if it makes us both look terrible. Especially because it makes us look terrible. We earned this the hard way. Might as well own it. Years later, when people asked how they met, and people always asked, they told the truth. About the wallet and the manipulation, about the contract and the lies, about revenge and prison and 8 years of visiting rooms. Some people were horrified. Some were fascinated. Most didn't know what to make of a love story that started with such calculated cruelty and ended with such hard-won honesty. But Mia didn't care what people thought anymore. She'd learned that lesson from Victor, the one valuable thing he'd taught her before all the manipulation came to light. She mattered. Her choices mattered. Her voice mattered. And she chose him, every day, with full knowledge of who he was and what he'd done. Not because he was perfect, not because he deserved it, but because love, real love, wasn't about deserving or earning. It was about choosing to see someone completely, flaws and all, and deciding they were worth fighting for anyway. In the end, the shy waitress who'd returned a wallet disappeared completely. In her place stood a woman who ran charitable foundations, who'd survived manipulation and media circuses, and her own transformation from invisible to essential. And beside her stood a man who'd learned that vengeance was empty and control was illusion, but love, messy, complicated, honest love, was worth more than any scheme or strategy. They built a life together, one choice at a time, one honest conversation at a time, one moment of choosing truth over comfortable lies. It wasn't the life either of them had planned. It was better.